Hey everyone. So I'm diving into a project that's totally new for me. I'm pretty excited about it. I want this creation to spark some joy and reflection. And it kicks off with the milling process. I'm building the box, but not just any box. I'm making a shadow box. Now, if you're not familiar with shadow boxes, they're basically display cases, sometimes called showcase cabinets or vitrines. They feature these transparent glass surfaces that are perfect for showcasing your favorite items. A little backstory on me: I spent nearly 14 years in the military as a master sergeant, and that experience is really close to my heart. The military shaped my identity and led me to what I consider the best kept secret career out there. For a lot of folks, joining the military might seem like just another option, but it's so much deeper than that. It represents a lifestyle, an experience, and for many, it's a stepping stone into adulthood. Young people join the military for all sorts of reasons: to serve a higher calling, to seek stability, honor family traditions, or as a path to fund their education. To retire from the military, be it active duty, guard, or reserve, you need at least 20 years under your belt. And let me tell you, that's a huge commitment. In those 2 decades, there are a ton of memories, both joyful and tough, like deployments, promotions, bonuses, missed birthdays, and even sad goodbyes. When you finish your service, we often commemorate that journey with a shadow box that highlights your milestones and achievements. I've never made one before, but I have some incredible friends who believe in me enough to commission this piece. So I definitely feel the pressure. I did a lot of research before starting, and when I say research, I really mean I dove into Google. I found tons of pictures and videos for inspiration. It seems like oak is a popular choice for shadow boxes, but I wanted something a bit different. So I went with white oak and walnut for that lovely contrast. White oak is dense with a beautiful grain, while walnut just pops when you find the right pieces. You'll notice that I'm moving my equipment around pretty often. Well, I'm in a garage shop and it's a small shop, so you'll find that having your equipment on wheels is actually very helpful. This is also a shared space, so I'm not able to keep all my equipment in a permanent location. Here's to wishful thinking, but maybe one day my wife will allow me to have both of the garages. Give me a like and subscribe if you agree with me and I should have that garage space. And if you agree with her, put a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I use that carpenter's triangle on every project that I can. I think it's very valuable to getting your pieces back, especially when you have your grain running in a particular direction. I pulled out my biscuit joiner here, and this is probably unnecessary. In fact, I know it's unnecessary, but you'll have to be careful when you do this, because if you put them in the wrong place, you'll pay for it later. Ask me how I know? Now, up to this point in the project, I've been busy. I picked out the best pieces of white oak, planed and jointed the wood, and I printed a large Master Sergeant insignia I found online. Then I glued it onto the MDF board to create my template. For alignment in my panel glue up, I decided to use biscuits. Maybe a bit over-engineered, but hey, that's my style. I found that the best way to shape the template was with my track saw. Much easier than trying to handle an awkward piece on my small job site saw. And for those inside angles, the jigsaw came to the rescue. My hope is that if this turns out well, I can reuse this template for future builds. The key is getting that template just right so I can confidently flush trim the white oak later. Now, onto a serious topic. So many young folks hit that point in life where they're at a crossroads. Do they go to college, jump into a job, or join the military? It's a tough call. College can be super expensive, and not everyone is in the position to afford it. Plus, if you go that route, you then have to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. No easy task. Getting a job right out of school is appealing too. But you've got to think about what kind of work you want to do and if you're qualified to do that type of work. And then there's the trade route, which can lead to a solid career with long-term benefits. Those who opt to join the military often fall into different categories. Some know that's the path for them right from the get-go, while others explore college or standard jobs before realizing the military's for them. My journey was all about college. I was always told that's how I'd land a good job. But honestly, I spent the first couple years trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was a first-generation college student, and without the right guidance, it was tough. When I graduated, I thought I was set. I landed my first job, and I was doing the daily grind. But after 6 years of sitting behind a desk, I realized I needed a change. That's when I decided to enlist in the military. Choosing which branch to join was another question. I did my homework, and while I had the qualifications to become an officer, I had my heart set on being a firefighter. The military seemed like the perfect way to serve my country and gain the skills I needed. I joined the Air Force Reserve, and within 3 years, I got my dream job as a career firefighter. Fast forward 14 years, and I'm loving every minute of it, even if I found myself back at a desk again. Everything we've done up until now was to ensure that we were able to route this white oak perfectly. Our template is in good shape, and we're going to use a flush trim bit from Bits and Bits to ensure it. I got this new router table recently, and hopefully this makes it easier to keep things stable as we route. I think we could say that's pretty stable. Dust collection, on the other hand, needs a little work. That's to be expected with one of these portable router tables. It's going to be better than doing it with your hand, but not as good as it's going to be if it was a standalone table. And obviously, if I'm using dust collection from a shop vac, it's not going to be as good as me using dust collection from a bigger system. Either way, I'm happy with the results. You probably can't tell here, but I'm really happy. I was super excited that it worked perfectly. The white oak has such a tight grain. I was very worried that I would route it the wrong direction and we'd find ourselves in trouble. With that done, we can move on to creating where the top of our box is going to be. And this is going to be the inside of our shadow box, and I'm just kind of taking some referential measurements to create the box. We don't need to waste more lumber than we need to. Sometimes things warp when you have it out for too long and you need to figure out a way to flatten it. So I use this straight edge that I bought, and I'll put a link down below so you guys can figure out where I got it. But I use this straight edge to find all my high spots and then my planer here just to take it down a little bit. It works perfectly. I wasn't able to complete the full 20 years in the Air Force Reserves. That was a family decision. I got super busy with life and just couldn't dedicate the time the military needed while also taking care of my family. One of the best parts about being in the military is meeting people from all walks of life and forming lifelong friendships that you might not have made otherwise. That's why I see the shadow box as a kind of time capsule. It really captures that experience. Now, I might not be lucky enough to receive a shadow box for my own military journey, but I totally get its significance and what it represents. This part of the build was both challenging and fun at the same time. These angles, while the bottoms were 90 degrees, the top angles I had to find and cut and trim and measure and cut again before I got them just right. Eventually, we got there, but it was quite the journey. So everything's going according to plan. Right now, I'm working on creating a template for the glass insert. This is where things got a bit tricky for me. I wasn't quite ready to use the glass because I was worried about the weight, so I opted for plexiglass instead. But let me tell you, my first attempt was a mess. Here's a little advice for you. Make sure you use a plexiglass blade and definitely turn off the aggressive mode on your jigsaw. And yes, I'm calling it the aggressive mode because I don't know what it is actually called. It'll save you a lot of stress. It's interesting the tips you pick up as you grow in your woodworking career. I know a lot of people always talk about putting down painter's tape when you're cutting plywood to prevent splinters, but you can also do it for things like plexiglass. The edge still wasn't perfect, but it's going to be glued and hidden on the inside. So anything I could do to make it better than just okay is worth it. And I'm showing you those plexiglass blades right there. They come in a pack of 5. I bought the ones from Diablo, and they did their job perfectly. For the rank insignia, I printed out another template from my computer, taped them together, and cut them on my cutting board. Individually, these pieces are going to be what makes our walnut pieces. And although I didn't have a exact plan for this, sometimes when you think ahead, you end up making decisions that will help you in the end. I'm labeling each piece here, so when I cut them out, I know exactly what side of the piece they belong on and what part of the project they also belong on. Trust me, little techniques and things like this, they go a long way to save you headaches at the end of your project. I used a little X-Acto knife to get all the intricate parts of the small template pieces. And I used a little bit of spray adhesive and again that green backed MDF to cut out our small pieces. I could have used the jigsaw to cut these pieces out, but the bandsaw made the job just so much easier. You could move the piece instead of moving your hands. It changed it for me. After that, I sanded and shaped the MDF pieces till they were to my liking. Once I was happy with those, it was on to the walnut. But not before test fitting the templates to make sure I got the spacing just right. My bandsaw is pretty old and underpowered, so I decided to go with a 2-part method. I resawed on the table saw first, then removed the last little bit in the middle on the bandsaw. The figure in the walnut was just gorgeous. This also presents a booked match look, which is also a very sought after look when it comes to walnut and something as figured as this. Next, I created a panel big enough for my template pieces, and since they were quite thin, I didn't want to leave anything to chance, so I added a few cauls for some extra support. It may look like I overdid it with the clamps, but you can never be too safe, especially when you're going so thin as this. When it comes to scrapers, I don't think I could live without this one. Between this one and my card scrapers, they do a lot of the hard work before I have to pull out my sander and kill sandpaper. A white pencil on the walnut helped ensure I could see my lines clearly. And again, back to the bandsaw, and you can see all of those labels I transferred over from the templates to the walnut pieces so that it also matched. I again got to use my favorite double-sided tape, and then I brought all my work pieces over to my new router table. And at the beginning, things were working out really well. They were working out really well, but they weren't perfect. Let's just say I was a bit stubborn and I tried again. If you have any ideas on why things went wrong, drop a comment below. There are so many tasks in woodworking that I'm still figuring out, and routing is one of those tricky ones. It has its own set of rules. I found myself really stumped, so I ended up calling MJ from Bits and Bits, and he was super helpful and even hooked me up with an awesome compression flush trim bit. It turns out that leaving too much material on the workpieces isn't a great idea, especially if the grain is running in all sorts of directions. Oh, and a starter pin would have been helpful here. Unfortunately, my router table doesn't have that option. Like I mentioned, this is my first time doing all of this, so I started with a rough idea in my head, and I'm learning as I go. I also need to figure out how to clamp down the bottom of the box, and I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I just build the box first and attach it to the frame later? Yeah, I had that thought too. After the fact. Sometimes you have to make a mistake to figure out the right way to do things. To help with clamping, I cut a hole in the center of my makeshift table so I could add another clamp in the middle of my workpiece. It actually worked like a charm. After securing the bottom piece, I moved on to the plexiglass. Because of my design, it needed to go in before attaching the rest of the box sides. I used a 2-part 5-minute epoxy that Starbond sent me for this. Ooh, look at that. Can you tell I'm amused with myself? Next, I shifted my focus to the internal pieces. This part will separate the flag from the rest of the box. I have to tell you, I really thought maple was tough when it comes to burning, but I could just look at this white oak and it would burn. No matter how slow I took it, it would still burn. Luckily, it sands pretty nicely. I cut the back easily using my miter saw after taking some referential measurements, and I wrapped up the internal divider off camera using Rubio Monocoat. You might notice that I'm hopping around a lot in this build, and that's because I'm finding certain tasks directly impact the next steps. If I'd built something like this before, I'd probably have a smoother flow, but we'll get it right for the next one. I don't know if you could tell from my attire, but I wasn't supposed to be doing woodworking right now. I think I might have entered the garage to grab a bubbly from the fridge and thought, hey, it'll only take a minute. Famous last words, right? The inside of the box will have a foam board covered in velvet, and that's going to be glued to the back. One of the most frustrating parts about this project was finding out what products can work with what things. I struggled trying to find an adhesive that would work on foam board without melting it until I found this Scotch Super 77. This spray worked like a charm. I went through 3 other sprays and that glue you see in the back, and not one of them really worked. So I was very happy when I found this. I used my favorite wood filler, Good Filler, to fill the gaps here, and you guys would never even know they're there unless I told you, which I just did. A little bit of mineral spirits before applying some Rubio Monocoat, and this product just comes to life. So many times on projects, you have these bright ideas. If I do this, this will help me do this later. But when you get to the end, you realize that they didn't help at all and you created more problems. That was me in this green tape here. I can't say enough about how honored I was to build this. I was very nervous leading into the build, and as I look back on it now, I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to make this. It pushed my skill sets to a limit that I didn't know I could reach, and the retiree was very honored to receive it. They loved it, and as you see here, once you put all of the accoutrements in it, it just comes to life. I hope he enjoys hanging this on his wall, and I can't wait to make the next one. Thank you guys for watching.